The shotgun blast echoed across the Wyoming plain as Olivia Monroe stood on her front porch, rifle still smoking in her hands, her warning shot having sent the would-be cattle rustlers scrambling. It was 1885, and a woman defending her own ranch was something most folks in Sweetwater County still couldn't quite stomach, especially a 24-year-old widow who refused to sell out to the neighboring spreads that circled her land like vultures. "Thought that might be you," came a deep voice from the edge of her property. "Heard the shot 3 miles away." Olivia lowered her Winchester and narrowed her eyes at the approaching rider. Owen Quinn sat tall in his saddle, the morning sun catching on his badge, the newest deputy marshal in the territory. His chestnut mare kicked up dust as they approached, and Olivia felt her jaw tighten. "Just protecting what's mine, Marshal Quinn," she called out, not bothering to hide the Winchester. "Nothing against the law about that." The corners of his mouth twitched beneath his thick mustache as he dismounted. "Those Hargrove boys again." "Third time this month," she replied, finally setting the rifle against the porch railing. "They think because Tom's dead I'll just roll over." Owen's blue eyes studied the horizon where the would-be rustlers had disappeared, then returned to her face. At 30, he had a weathered face that spoke of years on the range before he'd pinned on the badge 6 months ago. "Mrs. Monroe, have you considered if you're about to suggest I sell this place, you can get right back on that horse?" Olivia cut in, her voice sharp as a knife. "I buried my husband on this land. I'm not leaving it," Owen sighed, removing his hat to run a hand through his dark hair. "I was going to suggest you hire some help. Too much ranch for one person." Olivia crossed her arms. "Can't afford it. Every penny goes back into this place." "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met," he said, but there wasn't malice in his words, almost a hint of admiration. "Been called worse," she replied, turning to go inside. "Coffee's hot if you want some before you ride on." Owen tied his horse to the hitching post and followed her into the small but tidy ranch house. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the kitchen. He noticed the stack of ledgers on the table, numbers scratched out and rewritten, evidence of her struggle to keep the ranch afloat. "Drought's been hard on everyone," he commented, accepting the cup she offered. Olivia nodded, taking the seat across from him. "Harder on some than others. Hargrove's got his eye on my water rights. Man's determined to drive me out." "He's got the ear of Judge Pullman," Owen said carefully. "And half the county council. And you?" she asked, eyebrow raised. "Whose ear do you have, Marshal Quinn?" Their eyes locked across the table and something shifted in the space between them. Owen leaned forward slightly. "My own, Mrs. Monroe. I listen to my own counsel." She gave a small nod. "Good. That's a rare thing these days." As Owen finished his coffee, he noticed the calluses on her hands, the streak of dirt on her cheek, and the determined set of her jaw. Most women would have sold after their husbands died. Most would have returned east to family or remarried quickly. But Olivia Monroe wasn't most women. "I'll have a word with the Hargrove boys," he said, standing to leave. "Can't promise it'll stick, but they should know the law's watching." "Appreciate it," she replied, walking him to the door. "Though I reckon they're more afraid of my Winchester than your badge." Owen chuckled as he settled his hat back on his head. "That stubbornness of yours is going to get you in trouble one day, Mrs. Monroe." She stood in the doorway, a small smile finally crossing her lips. "It's kept me alive so far, Marshal." The following weeks brought no more visits from the Hargrove boys, but the drought intensified. The creek that ran through Olivia's property slowed to a trickle, and she spent long days digging deeper into the stream bed, trying to create pools deep enough for her cattle to drink from. It was during one such afternoon that Owen rode up again, this time with news. "Town meeting tomorrow," he said without preamble. "Hargrove's petitioning the county to reassess water rights along the creek basin. Thought you should know." Olivia straightened, wiping sweat from her brow. "That snake." "The creek's been part of this property since before Wyoming was even a territory." "Bring your deed papers," Owen advised, "and maybe wear something besides." He gestured at her mud-covered trousers and sweat-stained shirt. What's wrong with how I dress? She challenged, hands on her hips. Nothing, he backpedaled. Just that some of those councilmen are old-fashioned might help your case to remind them you're a respectable widow, not just a stubborn woman who doesn't know her place. She finished for him. Owen's expression softened. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She sighed, looking at the nearly dry creek. I'll be there. And I'll even wear a dress. True to her word, Olivia arrived at the town hall the next day in her Sunday best, a navy blue dress that had grown slightly too large for her frame after months of hard work and lean times. Her auburn hair was pinned neatly beneath a modest hat, though a few rebellious curls escaped around her face. The town council chamber fell silent as she entered. Most of the seats were already filled with ranchers and businessmen, all men, with the exception of the schoolteacher, Miss Perkins, who gave Olivia a small nod of solidarity. William Hargrove sat in the front row, his 3 sons beside him. At 48, he was one of the most powerful men in the county, his ranch spanning thousands of acres, and he wanted more. Mrs. Monroe, Judge Pullman acknowledged from the head of the table. We were just discussing the water allocation for the upcoming season. I'm sure you were, she replied evenly, taking a seat in the back row. Owen stood against the wall, arms crossed over his chest, his expression carefully neutral beneath his marshal's hat. But Olivia noticed how his eyes tracked Hargrove's movements. The meeting proceeded with various ranchers presenting their concerns about the drought, but it quickly became clear this was all preamble to Hargrove's petition. The Monroe property sits at a crucial juncture of Sweetwater Creek, Hargrove explained, pointing to a crude map. The current arrangement allows Mrs. Monroe to effectively dam or divert water that rightfully should flow to downstream properties, including mine. Olivia stood. I've never dammed or diverted anything. That's a bald-faced lie. Mrs. Monroe, please wait your turn, Judge Pullman admonished. When exactly will my turn be? She challenged. After you've already decided to steal my water rights, a murmur went through the room. Owen pushed off from the wall, moving slightly closer. Now see here, Hargrove blustered. This kind of emotional outburst is exactly why women shouldn't. I have the original land grant, Olivia interrupted, pulling documents from her handbag. Signed in 1868, confirming the creek and all tributaries on my property belong to the deed holder. My husband and I purchased it legally in '81, and I have the transfer of deed following his death. She walked forward and placed the papers on the council table. Nothing in Wyoming territorial law allows for the seizure of water rights without just compensation or due process. The room fell silent again, but this time with surprise. Few expected a ranch woman to know territorial law. Judge Pullman reluctantly examined the documents. These appear to be in order, he admitted. However, in times of drought, the council does have authority to temporarily reallocate resources for the common good. And how is giving William Hargrove my water for the common good? Olivia asked, her voice carrying through the hall. His ranch is 10 times the size of mine. He's not struggling, he's expanding. Meanwhile, smaller spreads like mine fight to survive. Several of the smaller ranchers nodded in agreement. Owen finally spoke up. Judge, if I may, territorial law also protects widows' rights to maintain their homesteads. Mrs. Monroe has kept her taxes paid and her fences maintained since her husband's passing. Seems to me the law is on her side here. The judge frowned at Owen, clearly not appreciating the intervention. This isn't about the law, Hargrove spat. It's about what makes sense. One woman can't manage a ranch that size. She's too stubborn to sell to someone who could make proper use of it. My stubbornness isn't your concern, Olivia shot back, and I've managed just fine. The meeting dissolved into heated debate, with smaller ranchers speaking up in Olivia's defense, while Hargrove's allies pushed for the reallocation. By the end, the council was split, and Judge Pullman reluctantly announced they would need more time to consider the matter. Outside the town hall, Olivia stood in the afternoon sun, the reality of her situation settling in. She might have won a reprieve, but Hargrove wouldn't stop. She startled when Owen appeared beside her. "That was quite a performance in there," he said quietly. "Wasn't a performance. Just fighting for what's mine." Owen nodded, looking down the dusty Main Street. "Can I buy you dinner? Seems like you could use a friendly face after that." Olivia hesitated. She hadn't dined with a man since Tom died, and tongues would wag. But the thought of returning to her empty ranch house after the contentious meeting held little appeal. "Just dinner," she agreed, "and I can buy my own." Owen smiled. "Never crossed my mind to suggest otherwise, Mrs. Monroe." The cafe was busy with the usual evening crowd, and their entrance together drew curious glances. They found a small table in the corner, where Olivia could sit with her back to the wall, a habit she'd developed since becoming a widow. "You know your way around territorial law," Owen commented after they'd ordered. "Not something most ranchers study." Olivia smoothed her napkin in her lap. "My father was a lawyer back in Ohio. He believed women should educate themselves, especially about their rights. When Tom and I came west, Dad sent law books, said we'd need them more here than in civilization. Smart man, he was." She paused. "He died last year, never got to visit us out here." "I'm sorry," Owen said, genuine sympathy in his voice. "Seems you've weathered more than your share of loss." She shrugged, uncomfortable with the sudden tenderness in his tone. "Everyone out here has their stories. What's yours?" he asked. "What brought you and your husband to Wyoming?" Olivia studied him for a moment, deciding how much to share. "Tom had consumption. Doctors said the dry air might help. We sold everything in Ohio and came west with what we could carry. The ranch was run down cheap. We fixed it up together for 3 years before." She left the sentence unfinished. "And now you're determined to keep it going no matter what. Wouldn't you be?" She challenged. If it was all you had left, their food arrived, temporarily halting the conversation. Olivia realized she was genuinely hungry for the first time in days. "I would," Owen finally answered. "I respect your fight, Mrs. Monroe, more than you might realize." Something in his voice made her look up from her plate. His blue eyes held none of the condescension she'd grown accustomed to from men in town. "Thank you," she said quietly. "And please call me Olivia." "Olivia," he repeated, the name sounding different in his low voice. "I'm Owen when I'm not being Marshal Quinn." A small smile crossed her lips. "I know, I've just been too stubborn to use it." He laughed, a warm sound that drew the attention of nearby diners. "Your stubbornness isn't always a bad thing, you know." "Oh, the whole county seems to disagree." "The whole county isn't seeing what I see," he replied. A woman with the strength to stand her ground when most men would have folded. The sincerity in his words caught her off guard, warming something inside her that had been cold for a long time. They finished their meal with lighter conversation, and for the first time in months, Olivia felt something besides weariness and worry. As they stepped outside the cafe, the setting sun painted the western sky in vivid oranges and purples. Owen walked her to where her wagon was hitched. "I'd feel better if you'd let me ride out with you," he said. "It'll be dark soon." "I've made the ride alone hundreds of times," she replied, but without the defensive edge that usually accompanied such statements. "I know you can handle yourself," he assured her. But after today's meeting, Hargrove might have his boys watching the roads. The possibility hadn't occurred to her, and she frowned. "You really think they'd try something?" "I think a man like Hargrove doesn't like losing," Owen said carefully, "and he definitely doesn't like losing to a woman." Olivia considered his words. "All right," she agreed, "but only because it makes tactical sense." Owen's smile crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Of course, purely tactical." The ride back to her ranch took longer than usual, as they kept a careful pace, and Owen insisted on checking the trail ahead at certain points. The full moon rose over the eastern hills, bathing the landscape in silver light. "Beautiful country," Owen commented as they crested a rise overlooking her property. The small ranch house and barn were visible in the distance, a tiny outpost of civilization in the vast wilderness. "It is," she agreed, "worth fighting for." They rode in companionable silence until they reached her yard. Owen dismounted first, coming around to help her down from the wagon, his hands strong and sure at her waist. The contact was brief, but sent an unexpected flutter through her stomach. "Thank you for the escort, Marshal," she said, taking a step back. "Owen," he corrected gently. "And it was my pleasure, Olivia." He tipped his hat and turned to go, but hesitated. "Would you mind if I stopped by again, just to check on things?" She raised an eyebrow. "Official business." "No," he admitted. "Not official at all." The honesty of his answer disarmed her. "I wouldn't mind," she said finally, "but I can't promise I'll be dressed like a proper lady. Ranch work isn't kind to dresses." His eyes warmed with amusement. "I think I prefer you in trousers anyway. Seems more honest." With that, he mounted his horse and rode away, leaving Olivia standing in her yard with a curious lightness in her chest that she hadn't felt since before Tom got sick. The next few weeks brought changes to Sweetwater County. The drought finally broke with 3 days of steady rain that had everyone rejoicing and caused the creek on Olivia's property to overflow its banks, washing out part of her eastern fence line. She was struggling to drag new fence posts through the mud when Owen rode up, leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. "Thought you might need these," he called out, dismounting. Lumber yard had some posts left from the railroad construction. Olivia pushed a strand of wet hair from her face, inadvertently smearing mud across her cheek. "How did you know?" "Rode by the creek yesterday," he explained, untying the load. "Saw the damage. Would have stopped then but had to escort a prisoner to Laramie." She eyed the supplies. "I can't accept charity, Owen." "Not charity," he countered, already shouldering several posts. "Consider it an investment in keeping Hargrove's cattle from wandering onto your land and causing more trouble." She knew he was giving her an out, a way to accept help without wounding her pride. "Fine," she conceded, "but I'm paying you back." "We'll discuss terms later," he said with a smile. "Right now, let's get this fence up before dark." They worked side by side through the afternoon, Owen's strength making the job go twice as fast. Olivia found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, the capable way he handled tools, the easy confidence in his movements, so different from Tom's scholarly manner. "Been meaning to ask," Owen said as they took a water break. "How'd you learn ranching? You said your father was a lawyer." Olivia wiped her hands on her trousers. "Learned by doing. Tom knew a little from summers on his uncle's farm. We made plenty of mistakes the first year, lost half our calves to coyotes because we didn't know to watch for them. And now I know better," she said simply. Owen nodded, understanding more than she'd said. "You ever think about the future, Olivia? Beyond just surviving season to season?" The question caught her off guard. "Haven't had that luxury," she admitted. "Been focused on keeping what I have. And if you didn't have to fight so hard." If things were secure, she gazed across her land, allowing herself a rare moment to dream. "I'd want to breed better stock, maybe plant an orchard where the soil's good near the creek. Tom always wanted apple trees." She paused. "What about you? Being a marshal can't be your whole life." Owen looked thoughtful. "Took the badge because the territory needed honest lawmen, but someday I'd like my own place, something modest but good, room for horses. No wife, children?" The words were out before she could reconsider them. His eyes met hers. "Haven't found the right woman." "Or maybe I have, but timing wasn't right." The implication hung in the air between them, neither willing to address it directly. Olivia turned back to the fence posts. "We should finish before we lose daylight," she said, her voice slightly unsteady. They completed the fence as the sun began to set, both mud-splattered but satisfied with their work. Owen helped her put away the tools in the barn, their hands brushing occasionally in the dim light. "Stay for supper," Olivia offered impulsively. "Least I can do." Owen accepted, and they walked to the house together, an easy companionship developing between them. In her kitchen, Olivia became acutely aware of how small the space was with his tall frame filling it. She busied herself preparing a simple meal of beans, bacon, and fresh bread she'd baked the previous day. "This is good," Owen said appreciatively as they ate. Been a while since I had a home-cooked meal. Where do you usually eat? She asked, curious about his life in town, cafe sometimes. More often just whatever I can manage over a campfire when I'm riding circuit. He took another bite. This is better. After supper, a comfortable silence fell as Owen helped her wash the dishes, their rhythm together unexpectedly natural. Through the window, they could see another storm rolling in from the west, dark clouds illuminated by distant lightning. Should probably head back before that hits, Owen said reluctantly. Olivia glanced at the approaching storm. Looks bad, might be safer to wait it out. They both knew she was offering more than shelter from the storm, and Owen studied her face carefully. Are you sure? He asked quietly. She wasn't sure, not entirely. But something had been building between them over these weeks, and the thought of him riding out into the storm left her cold. Yes, she answered. Stay. The storm arrived with fury, rain lashing against the windows and thunder shaking the small house. They sat before the fireplace, the crackling flames the only light besides occasional flashes of lightning. Tell me about him, Owen said softly. Your husband. Olivia stared into the fire. Tom was kind, gentle, loved books more than people except for me. He wasn't built for the West, but he came because I wanted adventure and he wanted me to be happy. She swallowed. He deserved better than dying out here. Sounds like he loved you very much, Owen observed. He did, she agreed. We were young when we married. I was 18, he was 20, still figuring out who we were. Owen nodded. And who are you now, Olivia Monroe, beyond the stubborn ranch woman everyone sees? The question touched something deep inside her. I don't know anymore, she admitted. For so long I've just been surviving, fighting. Sometimes I forget there was more to me once. I see more, Owen said, his voice low. I see a woman with courage and principles, who knows her own mind. Who feels things deeply but guards her heart carefully. His perception startled her. And you, Owen Quinn, who are you beyond the badge? He smiled faintly. A man who's spent too long wandering, who's looking for something real to hold on to. His eyes met hers. Who finds himself thinking about a certain stubborn woman far more than is probably wise. The confession hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Outside, the storm raged, but in the small circle of firelight, something fragile and precious was taking form. Owen, she whispered, not quite a question, not quite an invitation. He moved closer, reaching out to gently brush a strand of hair from her face. Your stubbornness, he murmured. It's not a flaw, Olivia, it's strength, the kind I admire. The kind she closed the distance between them, her lips finding his in a kiss that started tentatively but quickly deepened with months of loneliness and newfound longing. His arms encircled her, strong and secure, and for the first time since Tom's death, Olivia felt truly safe. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for weeks, he confessed. Why didn't you? She asked. Wasn't sure you were ready, wasn't sure I deserved to even ask. She touched his face, feeling the rough stubble beneath her fingers. I wasn't ready, she admitted. Not until now. They spent the night talking by the fire, sharing stories of their pasts and tentative hopes for the future. Owen spoke of his childhood in Missouri, his years working cattle drives, the events that led him to take up a lawman's badge. Olivia told him about her dreams of going to college before falling in love with Tom, about the grief that had nearly broken her, about her determination to honor her husband's memory by saving the ranch they'd built together. As dawn broke and the storm finally passed, they sat side by side on her porch, watching the sun rise over rain-washed hills. Hargrove won't stop, Owen said, breaking their comfortable silence. You know that. Olivia nodded. I know, the council meeting's just the beginning. We could fight him together, Owen suggested, taking her hand in his. My word carries some weight with the territorial governor. She turned to him, surprised. His expression grew serious. I'm not offering help because I think you can't manage alone, Olivia. You've proven you can. I'm offering because I want to stand with you, not just watch from the sidelines. And what would people say? The marshal taking sides in a local dispute. I'm not taking sides as a marshal, he said firmly. I'm supporting you as a man who cares deeply for you. The almost declaration made her heart race. That's a dangerous position to take. Worth the risk, he replied, squeezing her hand. Your stubbornness has kept this place going. Maybe my badge can help keep Hargrove honest while we figure out what comes next. What comes next? She repeated softly. I haven't thought beyond survival in so long. Owen turned to face her fully. Think about it now, he urged. What do you want, Olivia, not just for the ranch, but for yourself? She considered his question, looking out at her land with new eyes. I want peace, she said finally, security, but not at the cost of giving up what Tom and I built. And is there room in that future for someone else? Owen asked, his voice carefully neutral. For me, Olivia met his gaze, seeing the hope and uncertainty there. I think, she said slowly, there might be if we're careful, if we take time. His smile was like sunrise. Time I've got, and careful I can manage, though it won't be easy around you. She laughed, the sound surprising them both. I suppose my stubbornness can be trying. Your stubbornness is your strength, Owen corrected, bringing her hand to his lips. And maybe, if you'll let me, I can be your support while you use that strength to build something new. The summer brought changes no one in Sweetwater County had anticipated. Judge Pullman, facing pressure from the territorial governor's office, ruled in favor of preserving the original water rights allocations, a victory for Olivia and the smaller ranchers. Hargrove fumed, but found his influence suddenly diminished when rumors of his business practices reached banking circles in Cheyenne. Owen became a regular visitor to the Monroe Ranch, helping with repairs and improvements when his duties allowed. Town gossip flowed freely, but neither of them paid it much mind. They moved forward carefully, both still healing from their own pasts, both cautious about building a future together. By harvest time, Olivia's ranch was showing signs of recovery. The rains had been good, her reduced but healthier herd was thriving, and the apple saplings Owen had surprised her with were taking root along the creek bank. On a golden October afternoon, Owen rode up to find Olivia mending a saddle on the porch. She looked up, her face breaking into a smile that still made his heart skip. You're early, she called as he dismounted. Had something important to ask, he replied, coming up the steps. He sat beside her on the porch, suddenly nervous, been thinking about the future. She set aside her work. Oh, what about it? About how I don't want to keep riding back to town every night, about how this place needs more than occasional help. He took her hands in his. About how I've fallen in love with the most stubborn woman in Wyoming territory. Olivia's breath caught. Owen, let me finish, he said gently. I know it hasn't been long, I know you're still carrying Tom in your heart, and that's as it should be. But I'm asking if there's room for me too, not just as a visitor but as a partner, in everything. Tears welled in her eyes. Are you proposing Marshal Quinn? I believe I am, Mrs. Monroe, he answered, his voice rough with emotion. I love you, Olivia, your strength, your determination, your heart. Will you marry me? She looked out at the land she'd fought so hard to keep, then back at the man who'd helped her see beyond mere survival to the possibility of happiness again. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. Owen gathered her into his arms, his kiss a promise of all that was to come. When they finally parted, Olivia laughed softly. What's funny? He asked, brushing a tear from her cheek. Just thinking about what everyone said, that I was too stubborn for my own good. Turns out my stubbornness led me here, to this moment. Owen smiled, holding her close as the setting sun bathed them in golden light. Your stubbornness is your strength, he murmured into her hair, and now it's mine too. In the spring of 1886, Olivia Monroe became Olivia Quinn in a small ceremony on the ranch. They planted more apple trees that summer, expanded the herd with better stock, and built an addition onto the house. The Monroe Quinn Ranch became known for its hospitality to travelers and fair dealings with neighbors. And when their daughter was born the following year, a little girl with her mother's auburn hair and her father's blue eyes, Owen suggested they name her Constance. For her mother's most admirable quality, he explained with a wink. Olivia laughed, cradling their child. Stubbornness by any other name, she agreed, leaning into her husband's embrace as they stood together on the porch of the home they'd built, looking out at the future stretching before them, a future made possible by a woman too stubborn to give up, and a man wise enough to see that stubbornness as strength.